So it's science. I mean, it's not, it's not Paul Zentarski talking up PE. I mean, there's real science behind it. When he came to us, he talked to us about brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And he said, all right, here's what we found. We had 3 cages of lab rats. And one set of lab rats just sat in a cage. We would put them in a maze, and it was called a Morris water maze. And in this water maze, the water was opaque, so the rats couldn't see the bottom. Well, rats don't like water. They flounder, they want to get out. But along the way in this maze, they would put platforms, and the rats would get out of the water, climb on the platform, rest, but driven by hunger to get to the food at the end of the maze, went back in. Okay. Second set of lab rats, they put exercise wheels in their cage. They ran for an average of 4 hours a day. After the first time when they put them in the maze, they remembered where those platforms were. Swam right to the platforms, got out, rested, but again driven by hunger, went in. Second set of lab rat, or third set of lab rats, they put an exercise wheel and they ran for an average of 8 hours a day. So when they did the same thing, they remembered where the platforms were, driven by hunger, continued and got out. So that led scientists to say, you develop brain cells through exercise, not through study, not through, just repetition. You've got to create new brain cells, because what they did at the end of the study is they autopsied the rats. Mm-hmm. Found significantly more brain cells in the 4-hour group than in the problem-solving group, and even more in the 8-hour group than in the 4-hour group. So they say it's BDNF. If we even had a brain cell in a petri dish and we sprinkled it with BDNF, we would literally start to see it grow. So it's cardiovascular exercise that builds new brain cells, regardless of our age. And we didn't know this. It wasn't, until about the mid-90s when this study came out. We thought you were born with X number of brain cells and then you spent the rest of your life killing them off by doing bad things. Not true. Here's what happened. Here's how PE for Life came to be. A guy by the name of Jim Baugh, B-A-U-G-H, came to visit our phys ed program in 1999. At the time, he was president of Wilson Sporting Goods, which is in their corporate offices here in Chicago. And what he came for was he was finding that Wilson was not selling as many tennis balls and baseball mitts and baseball bats and stuff as they had been for a number of years. Found that schools were declining in what they were buying from Wilson. Wanted to find out what was going on with PE program. Well, when he came and he spent 2 days with us, and that was Phil Lawler and myself, he said, I get it. PE is more than just selling bats and balls. It's about doing what's right for kids, and you guys are doing what's right for kids. Well, then he decided he would go to other sporting good manufacturers and create a nonprofit organization called PE for Life. So they did. They started it in Kansas City. They've been a big funder of it. And since then, PE for Life has gone out and found other funds and have found ways to make money by doing trainings. So that's kind of where PE for Life came. So it was a result of him coming to visit the PE program in Naperville that said, okay, we need to do it. Well, PE for Life's thing has been, okay, we're going to train people about quality PE, and one of the sites is we're going to send people to see Naperville and what their PE program is doing, because it's so much different than what's going on around the world. I went to Texas El Paso, and I said, okay, tell me, is football really the first class? Oh yeah, that's the. I said, well, tell me about it. Well, it's 90 minutes, so we'll practice for 60 minutes and then give them a 30-minute study hall. Well, I said, hello, give them the study hall, exercise it for 60 minutes, then send them off to class. They would be better prepared for class following activity exercise than if so the dumbest thing you could do is exercise and then go to study hall. I said that, the brain science is like, hey, you gotta get those chemicals up and ready, and now the kids are alert and all that. They're ready to learn better. So
it's almost like study halls, almost like that polar opposite of PE.
Exactly.
It's
exactly
you
what
can be engaged in study hall, but there's no motivation other than your own.
You know what happens.
Yeah.
They're reading, they're sleeping.
Well, they come back down.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Yeah. This is an inner city Kansas City school, right in the hood. This is an elementary school. And what PE for Life did is they wrote a grant and they got more money and they were able to then hire another PE teacher because they went from 1 day a week PE to 5 days a week PE. That's the only change that school made that year. They wanted to improve fitness scores. Well, from fall testing to spring testing, paced curl-ups, that's sit-ups, went up 196%. Push-ups went up 71%. Modified sit and reach, which is flexibility, okay, went up 103%. Pacer is a cardiovascular test, okay.
Wow.
And it went up 145%. So again, what we set out to do, we really accomplished it. What that school found out is they had a 51% drop in disciplinary incidents involving violence, a 60% drop in out-of-school suspension days. Why? Because exercise affects mood as well as cognitive function.
Kids are better behaved.
Exactly. These chemicals have come into play, and they're in a better position to learn, in a better position to not act out. There's the superintendent in upstate New York, when he was a building principal at a junior high, and I've gotten to know him because he came and looked at our program and started this back at his school when he was a building principal. Any kid diagnosed with ADD had to ride a stationary bike at this middle school for 15 minutes when they first arrived at school. In 1 year, effectively took the amount of Ritalin out of that school, almost completely. The worst case scenario is one kid had to take half the dose. Some kids completely got off of it because you're creating those chemicals naturally in the brain. Memory happens during sleep. When you're sleeping, you replay the day's activities. So if you want your kids to do well in school, the best thing for them to do is before they go to sleep, just before they go to sleep, that's when they should be studying for tests. Don't come home, do homework, then eat, then watch TV, then do Facebook, don't get on the computer. Do all of that stuff before, then the last thing you should do is study before you go to sleep. Because especially during REM sleep, the early part of sleep, that's when your brain replays the day's activity and it stores all that stuff. Not while you're sitting in a classroom. It is estimated students will forget 90% of what they've learned in class within 30 days. The majority of that will happen the first few hours after class.
Wow.
All this preparation we do for our classes, and, believe it or not, we PE teachers prepare too. As the kids start to walk out the door, if there's no carpeting on the floor, you can almost kind of hear the information falling out. Right, and I mean that's just what happens. But it's believed that memory occurs in the brain during sleep, so it replays the day, and that's when it's stored. So that's why it's important. That's the last thing, like your kids should do. That would be a good thing for them to do before they go to sleep, especially during REM sleep. Sight trumps. When you're asking kids to sit, first of all, we go back to our ancestor days when we were up and moving and walking, okay? Well, when you're sitting now, you're pinching off blood flow here, and you're pinching off blood flow here. And gravity's now working. It's all going here because you're not moving around to get your heart to pump it throughout your whole body. So yeah, it's really crucial for teachers to put movement in the learning process, to do it. Now what would also happening is we'll get kids that have been in the LRPE program as freshmen. They will advocate for themselves after that, and they'll say, you know what, I'm struggling in science a little bit, and they'll talk to their counselor and say, you need to schedule me a PE class before I have science.
So they can see the difference.
They can see the difference. One of the books the book that Scott and I use to teach our class is called Brain Rules by John Medina, and you'll see it here.
Okay.
Since I have a slide. In the book, the first chapter he talks about is the value of exercise. He said if he could create the perfect school system, it would look like this. Every kid would come to school in a uniform. A uniform would be a PE uniform. It would start with 20 minutes of activity, followed by 20 minutes of learning, followed by 20 minutes of activity, followed by 20 minutes of relearning that same thing. And then come back now, 20 minutes of activity, new learning, and relearning. Because that's how you'll learn, is getting that same lesson over and over again several times. In Finland, they have the highest literacy rate in the world. In elementary school, after every 45 minutes of class, their kids take a 15-minute active break outside. They have to go outside. Now, Finland's climate is worse than ours.
Right.
They literally have to put on all of their snow clothes, their suits on, go outside for 15 minutes, be active, come back inside, take the time to do that. And at the high school level, their classes are 90-minute blocks of time, but they still take a 15-minute active break. Now, that active break can include music, because musicality is an important part of brain function. And again, another one of those specials that we take out of school, because reading and mathematics is more important than anything else. Well, shit. I don't, you could graduate number one in your class, from my standpoint, and die of a heart attack at 35 and say, well, boy, he was smart, son of a bitch, but he died at 35 because he didn't take care of his body.